So I'm gonna make you co-host. Hi, Amy, welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Go ahead and make you co-host.
Thank you.
Hi, Esther, welcome.
Hello, how you guys doing?
We're good. We're excited for this meeting today.
Oh, me too.
Hi, Douglas, welcome. Douglas, I'm gonna make you co-host so you can go ahead and pin both interpreters, okay?
Okay, and is my interpreter are there now or no?
Yes, they're both here.
Okay, I gotta look for them.
Yes, one of them is ASL interpreter Jenny, and the other is interpreter Linguistica, interpreting and translation.
I can pin them.
You can't pin them, is that what you said, Douglas?
Yeah, I can pin them.
Okay, let me see. Okay, your co-host.
Yeah, hi Douglas, it's Amy. If you click on the three little dots on the top right-hand side of your black box where it says your name, right
Well, I'm
click on
using my
that.
phone. Okay, okay, I see it. Okay, I see caption, AI companion, code tool, meeting setting, app, or note.
I don't know that you can pin on the phone. Because you can't see that many faces at once anyway. Let me just check.
I can check, Amy. I can log on via phone, via Zoom.
I cannot do it. It's hard for me to figure it out in the last minute. I get all nervous.
Also, can I get the document again that we discussed yesterday?
The facilitator guide, Hector?
Yes.
Okay, let me email that to you.
Sure.
Then.
Welcome everyone. Good evening. I see several folks are trickling in. This is
Okay,
Amy
I got her
Ramos.
pin.
Douglas has a pin. Douglas is a resident on
Hi.
CSC. Hi. Welcome, Mary Elizabeth. We are about to get started momentarily. As we can see, members are trickling in. We'll give it about 2 more minutes.
Is Mercedes have an interpreter with her, or is it another box?
Another box.
The internet is slow for her. Okay.
Oh yeah, she dropped off. I don't see her now.
I'll be back
Hi,
soon.
team.
Okay, no problem. All right. Thank you, Mercedes. Yeah, I think clearly. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Amy Ramos. We are about to kick off our 55th Community Steering Committee meeting this evening. It is 5:01 p.m. on my computer's clock. We will get started in the next minute.
Hector, just checking in. Were you able to get that email? Did you get that email?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect.
Right, well, welcome everyone. Congratulations on making it to this important meeting. This is our 55th Community Steering Committee meeting for the AB617 community in Stockton. So thank you all for your ongoing presence, and your input and collaboration in this process. Before we kick off the meeting officially, we were going to go over some logistics to ensure that everyone is in the right place at the right time and you have all of your settings set up. So as you can see here on your screen, we want to make sure that those of you who are joining us via your phone or your tablet or however you are joining us, that we can actually document who is present in tonight's meeting. So we do ask that you change your screen name so that when we call on you, we can identify you by first and last name, and most importantly, by membership. So if you are a CSC member, we ask that you use the following naming conventions. That is that you would put CSC followed by your first name and last name. If you are a resident, as you can see here on Douglas's screen, we have an R before his first name and last name. All other participants that are joining us tonight, we really appreciate you. We think it's extremely important for other community members to be present to ensure the effective implementation of AB617.
Trixie, come here.
To help facilitate the implementation and to increase the flow of tonight's meeting, we'd love for you to also list your affiliations. So for example, our colleagues at the Air District or CARB would have AD or CARB, followed by, after their first and last name. And if you are joining us as a community member who is just here from the general public, we do ask that you indicate that you are here as a public member by writing P before your name. All other organizations that are joining us tonight as an organizational representative do ask that you also put your org affiliation so that we can document your questions and comments throughout tonight's meeting. Note that if you on your end do not make these changes, you will see our team go in and make those changes for you. Thank you. As a reminder, some of you are calling in via your cell phone and have your computer going on at the same time. We do celebrate your multitasking capacity. And in addition to that, we do ask that you link your phone to your video so that you don't appear twice in our meeting. So if you are linking your phone, please do use the link feature that's available under the audio control of your Zoom features. Please note that if you are in a linked feature, you want to make sure that when you do come off the mute function on your Zoom feature that you're using the right apparatus. We go to the next slide. In order for us to have an effective meeting, especially a virtual meeting, you know, we all love to be in person, but we also need to have these meetings via Zoom. We ask that you help us engage in some virtual meeting etiquette. That is, we ask that you use the mute feature on your app unless you are speaking or planning to speak. If you're calling in via phone, you can use *6 to unmute yourself. In addition to that, there'll be many times when we have presenters and we have folks that are talking. So we do ask that you use the raise your hand feature on Zoom so that we can call on you as folks ask questions. Very often we'll have several folks that have questions, so maybe more than 5 people. Our team monitors who ask the question in what order, and we will make sure to call on you in the proper sequence that you raised your hand in. Residents that are part of the stipend program should stay on for at least 75% of the meeting to be eligible for the stipend. That means that for our CSC members, that is 90 minutes of this 2-hour meeting, and the meeting started at 5. Before you start talking, when you do have a question and we call on you, we do ask that you state your name before sharing your comment to allow for smooth interpretation of our conversation. As you can see here tonight, we have Mercedes, and their colleague here tonight to do some of our translation. We want to make sure that Mercedes has all the content to be able to translate effectively. In addition to some of these virtual meeting etiquettes, we also add on the next slide that we all support each other collectively so that we can have a productive discussion and a respectful dialogue. As you already know, in order for us to have a productive discussion and respectful dialogue, that means that we're helping each other achieve the meeting goals. Today we have, as always, a packed agenda. Luckily, we have two co-hosts tonight. They're going to help with the effective flow of the meeting. And so we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to participate. That might mean that you might be someone that needs to step up or maybe step back. We ask that everyone be civil and respectful. We ask that we stay on point and on time. We want to make sure that we really are respecting the time that we've allocated for each agenda item and that we help everyone attack the problem and not the person. Our whole goal for not only for tonight, but for all of implementation of AB617 is to seek common ground. That is, we seek common ground by building consensus and finding shared values that are going to help us achieve the best possible results. So to do that, we will be reviewing our action item tracker to help remind us and get us in the right mindset of all the things that we agreed we'd collectively be responsible for implementing. And then we'll quickly transition into talking about the residential lawn and garden discussion. At that point, we will aim to build consensus. And then at 5:40, we'll talk about the urban greening and vegetative barriers proposal review. And then we'll transition to our traditional standing updates, next steps, and agenda setting. We have a time allocated specifically for public comment. If you are here from the public, and I do see several P's on my screen, and have a comment that's related to one of the topics that we're discussing, feel free to raise your hand and we'll include your comment during that agenda item. But all general comments should be saved until the 6:55 time that's allocated for general public comment. So with that said, I see that many of you are here and you are ready to engage in the meeting. As I said previously, my name is Amy Ramos, and I am accompanied tonight by my two colleagues, Jared and Laura, who are here to help us facilitate tonight's meeting. And you will see us interacting with you through Zoom. We might chat with you. We might be part of the Q&A that you see us leading in today's meeting. As you can see on your screen, today's agenda is designed to offer you an opportunity to engage in two really important CERT measures. It's extremely important that you engage in this conversation as a CSC member and as a resident so that we can help bring cleaner air to your community. Before we get started with the meeting, just want to pause and make sure that we have everyone signed in and we don't have any tech issues. So I'm just going to pause for a second and check. We are recorded. We are live on YouTube, and I'm not seeing anyone with technical difficulties. So with that said, I am delighted to pass it to our co-host to offer some warm welcoming remarks. So thank you, Debbie and Excellent, for volunteering to be our community co-host. With that said, I'm going to pass it to Debbie to kick us off with some welcoming remarks for tonight's meeting. Debbie. Oh, Debbie, let me unmute your feature here. Oh, I think we unmuted at the same time. We still can't hear you, Debbie. Okay, I cannot hear you, so let me unmute on my end for you. And now go ahead and accept that. No, cannot. Can others hear her? I can't hear you. It's okay, Debbie. I know when the pressure's on, it feels, there you go.
All right. There we go. The little hand didn't want to work. I am really excited about this meeting. That's why I said I would be a second co-host, because it's got two things that really, I'm really excited to bring to the table, to talk about, to mull over, and we're going to do it with adding more money to the wonderful lawn and garden item. And we're also going to do it with trees finally. So we are excited. And I will pass it to Hector.
Hello, everybody. So Hector Olivares, most of you guys know me from Catholic Charities Diocese of Stockton, and I'm one of the CSC members. And again, just like to thank everyone for attending this meeting. I know that it takes time after a long day of work, to jump on a Zoom meeting. It's sometimes it can be very tiresome, but it's really important. We are making a big difference, so I'd like to thank you guys here. And just wanted, before we start, just wanted to give an update on there's work that we are doing outside of AB617 that's directly reflected on South Stockton. And part of the coalition that our organization is part of is the Mormon Slough restoration program. I just wanted to give a real quick minute to talk about that. The Mormon Slough is that area just south of the Crosstown Freeway, right? Most of you guys know it as a big ditch that has tons of trash in it. So the work that this coalition is trying to do is to actually get water flowing through there and get that area restored as natural habitat like it was well over 100 years ago. So that's some of the work that we're doing, and that's going to directly benefit all the members within South Stockton, but also the community within the AB617 area as far as clean air, clean water, a place for recreation, and just something really nice to look at as opposed to what it is now. And with that, I will pass it back and we'll go forward.
Thank you so much to our two community co-hosts. Super excited to have two in this virtual setting. We've only ever had two community co-hosts in person. So I have a feeling it's going to be a dynamic meeting tonight. So I'm going to pass it to Stephanie from the Air District to kick us off.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ng, and I'm a program manager in our Community Strategies and Resources Department. And I just wanted to echo both of our co-hosts and thank everyone for being here tonight. I'm feeling so energized about the topics that we have. I think they're definitely high priority measures that the CSC has really been pushing to move forward. So looking forward to the discussion tonight. And I just want to extend a huge thank you to Debbie and Hector for all the prep that they did with our team to really shape what's going to be, I think, a really great meeting. I'll quickly just note, and we'll introduce folks as the items go along, that there are a handful of probably new faces or recurring faces in the room today, because we do have a few extra folks that are here to support the agenda items. But I'm looking forward to tonight and ready to jump right in. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. This is Amy. With that said, we're going to review the action item tracker. As we're reviewing this, Rocio's going to go through the progress and the status of the things that are being tracked. If you have any questions, please feel free to put the questions in the chat or raise your hand, and we will call on you after Rocio is done reviewing the action item tracker. Rocio?
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. This is Rocio. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen with action items? Thanks and head nodding, thank you. Okay, so today we have 3 action items to go over. The first one is in the pending section. And so the first action item is for the Air District to analyze and present the air monitoring data for the 4th of July fireworks season, which is from June to July. So we'll make sure to have this data, have an update on this data at the next community air monitoring update. Moving on to the next section, which is the completed section. And so for the first action item, it was for CARB to follow up with the CSC member who had a question at the last meeting about an innovative research exploring the link between the weather patterns and air quality. So CARB is currently working with the CSC member to find out more information on this. And then moving on to the next completed action item, It's for the city of Stockton to check on the use of mopeds and scooters on the bike lanes. And so the city of Stockton did look into this, and in accordance with the California Vehicle Code, the mopeds are not permitted to be used on the bike lanes. However, the scooters are allowed. And that's the end of the action items. We only did have 3 today, but I'm happy to pause and see if anyone has any questions on these.
What's the difference between a scooter and a moped?
This is Stephanie. I think the question, if I remember it correctly, I think mopeds are those kind of like motorized little bikes. And then a scooter, I think, I mean, I don't know if folks were meaning the electric version, but there's also kind of the push version that you like stand on and you like kick off of. I
Okay.
think that's why maybe those are allowed and perhaps the more electric ones are not permitted on. Yeah.
Great question, Debbie. Thanks, Steph, for answering that. And Mary Elizabeth, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. So on the moped is I think a moped is different than an e-bike. So there's different classes of e-bike. And so if you could get something in writing on that, where they found that, what definition that they were using. And another one of the topics there was sidewalks. So not just a bike path, right, which is on the road, or it could be separated like the Calaveras bike trail, right, that is completely off-road. So I think those were the issues there. Thank you.
This is Stephanie, and maybe just for a little bit more clarification, hearing from kind of the city, since there's no specific ordinance on mopeds or scooters, they do follow the California Vehicle Code, which is what you see in parentheses there. But I think, Mary, to your point, I do remember some conversation also about sidewalks too, so we can follow up with the city on that as well.
Thank you.
Amy, thank you, Stefan Rosillo, for answering those questions and walking us through the action item tracker. At this time, I'm not seeing any more questions. Sounds like the Air District will continue to be very busy. I see a lot of pending items on that list. Really appreciate your time and dedication to getting all those items finalized. With that said, I'm going to pass it to my colleague Laura to kick us off to our next agenda item.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, thank you, Rocio, for going through the action items tracker. At this time, we're going to be transitioning our conversation to bulk of our meeting, which is a residential lawn and garden discussion. We, as mentioned previously, we have the privilege of having 2 community co-hosts. So I'm going to pass it to Hector to provide us with a little bit of context around this agenda item. So Hector, floor is yours.
Hello. So again, wanted to talk about this program that I think it would be really beneficial when we're talking about our SERP, when we're talking about emissions reductions here in, South Stockton. We always think about vehicles, we think about some, other traditional emission sources, but a lot of times we tend to overlook some of the really big pollution sources that we don't really consider. And one of those is lawnmowers. If we're looking at lawnmowers and we're looking at a reduction in emissions, lawnmowers, 1 hour use of lawnmower, this is according to the EPA, equals about 45 vehicle traveled miles. So being able to transition that lawnmower to something that is actually, rechargeable from a rechargeable battery powered lawnmower, something that's more green, more efficient, is going to go a long ways as far as for our emissions reduction program for South Stockton. So that's one way to look at it. Replacing lawnmowers is actually a VMT, vehicle miles traveled. It's a reduction of that because of the equations of the hour of operations compared to vehicle miles traveled. So I know that Stockton had in May, a very successful event for the lawnmower replacement program. They had it in Stockton. They had it in our AB617 area. And, you know, they gave away 155 lawnmowers. That was a humongous event. They actually gave away more lawnmowers than they had abroad. So some people had to turn away. So when we're looking at hosting another event, I think it's fantastic. One is to make sure that we meet people where they're at. We're making things as easy as possible for them. And, you know, obviously there's a need. When we had turned people away, obviously there's a need. So to be able to replicate that, I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And with that, I just wanted to pass it back. Or pass it to, pass it back.
Yeah, thank you, Hector, for providing that context around the importance of the residential lawn and garden measure and the possibility of reallocating those funds. So we are looking to reallocate $200,000 to support an additional 400 lawnmowers and to hold those additional lawnmower distribution events in Stockton. So a little bit more context on that. And with that, I'll pass it to Debbie, our other co-host, to share some reflections.
And well, I'm excited because we get another chance to, in case we missed it, which I did miss the last one, and I'm gonna attend this next one. If we decide to move the $200,000, which is a good amount. And we'll go through the budgetary details on that. But I think it's so needed for this area. And if we had the response that we had the last time, the next time we should have just as good of a response, if not better, I think. So I'm looking forward to it so much. I have an old mower, old gas mower. It still works pretty well, but I'm gonna trade that in because I want to be cleaner. So let's talk about having some more money to do things within lawn and garden.
Thank you, Debbie, for those reflections and for your commitment to bettering the community and clearing the air in Stockton. I think that's a testament, right, to how amazing this program will be. And I remember you advocating for having another event. So really appreciative of you voicing your opinion on why this is so important. And I think before we pass it to the Air District, just really want to be explicit about our asks during this agenda item. So we are looking to build consensus around this item. And if there is any opposition, once Stephanie and the Air District is done presenting, we can go into breakout rooms. So just want to share a little bit on that. But yeah, with that, I'll pass it to Stephanie from the Air District to provide you all with the presentation and with the facts around this measure.
Hello, everyone. This is Stephanie. I don't think I could have really set it up better than Hector and Debbie already did. So I'm just going to go ahead and get it started. To get us started, I just want to talk about the kind of current status of the measure. As a reminder to folks, the purpose of this measure is to replace gas-powered lawnmowers with electric equipment, and really at no cost to Stockton AB617 residents, essentially up to $500, which typically can cover really most electric lawnmowers. The current funding in the SERP, we have $120K allocated to the measure. And currently, just from a few days ago when I updated these numbers, we spent just under $76,000 on this measure, with 219 mowers replaced. And like you all have heard, we've done one event, which was really awesome to hold in the community. What we have remaining in this SERP measure is just a little over $44,000, which is probably enough for about 88 mowers. I think Hector had a great summary, but really when we think about lawnmowers, I don't know that we always think of them as, usual sources of in the community, but they are really local. They have really local impacts. It's thinking about like where, families live, where children live, and where they play. And so really there are a lot of emissions impacts when we think about lawnmowers. So it's a really great source for us to tackle. I'll kind of remind folks, I know a lot, we chatted about it a little bit already, but we did have a really successful event in May where we gave away 155 mowers. So just thinking about the program globally, we had 155 mowers that we exchanged that day out of the 219 in the program total. So just about 70% of the mowers that we've done in this whole program came from this one event. So we really do think these events are really, really successful. For kind of allowing folks to engage with the program and for reducing barriers to participation in the program. Because they really are kind of these one-stop shop events where people can drop off their old lawnmower, get a new one without having to go through that, the typical program, which does require you to kind of pay out of pocket and be reimbursed later. We do understand that to be a challenge for some folks. Overall, it is our commitment to really the whole CSC to work with you all to reallocate funds in need measures as we need to. And I know that the CSC overall, I know you all have had, remember a lot of, experiences going through this reallocation process. Some examples that we've kind of done this in the past is even for this own measure for residential lawn and garden. We did, as a CSC, you all supported moving 100K to this measure, which was super helpful and necessary for us to put on that first event. Some other examples, we did a funding reallocation for commercial lawn and garden to support Stockton Unified. Also, very, very recently, reallocated $2 million to support the passenger vehicle replace measure. And so again, we are committed to working with you all to reallocate funds again to those in-need measures and really to allow for this to happen and to have these reallocation discussions. It's also important for us to work with you all to identify measures that don't have as much interest or really aren't progressing as we would expect them to. So that being said, this is something that we presented back in June to you all when we were providing kind of a big budget update. It was a pretty comprehensive budget update. So I'll kind of just remind folks about the status of the diesel switcher locomotive measure. We do have $6.8 million in this measure. This was a measure that we have historically been working with the port to try and get some of these pieces switched out. Something that as an update, we talked about this again in June, but in April of 2023, there was a regulation that came into effect that essentially limited the time that agencies can provide kind of funding for the replacement of this equipment with state dollars. And so essentially what that means is really like businesses aren't getting as much and as high incentive back to be incentivized to make these replacements. And so kind of that being the case, we do definitely still want to do these projects in the community. And so the district has been seeking and actually applied for a federal grant to allow for us to still do this, do these replacements in the community to replace locomotives. And really our thought is kind of given if we do receive this federal grant funding, to use this funding from in our SERP that comes from the state and leverage these funds to kind of maximize the incentive to allow for these replacements to happen. So again, we are seeking federal funds to allow us to still do this work because we know these projects are really important in the community. But while we're still seeking these opportunities, we are recommending to reallocate some of the funds in this measure for other measures that are priority and really have the need that we see kind of demonstrated that, they could use extra funding to support more units or support more events. And so with that being said, we did want to kind of bring an option to you all. I know that we've had, a few folks bring this up as a recommendation, but essentially the kind of option to you all to kind of seek support for is adding 200K to the residential lawn and garden program. That would allow us to do at the very least 400 additional units. So 400 additional residents can apply for the program. And I'm saying at the very least, because that's 400 people if they all kind of went for that maximum $500, which is possible that not everyone goes for that full amount. And if that's the case, we do even more than 400. And then that would also allow us to hold a large event in the community, which I know that there's lots of excitement for that. And if folks aren't supportive of this, what this would mean is that we would just continue funding the remainder in the measure, and we would not hold an in-person event. So that's the presentation. I'm at this point happy to take any questions and maybe pass back to Harder to kind of facilitate any discussion.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the chat, and this is louder, by the way. Yeah, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the chat that folks are saying how great the lawnmowers are that the Air District is able to provide them. So getting a lot of positive comments on them. So just want to share that from the chat. And I do see that Debbie, you have your hand raised. We can go to Debbie. Debbie, you are muted.
Do you try it again, Erin?
There you go.
I would just like to know what the amount is still in there that is available.
This is Stephanie. I'm going to share my screen again. This very last box on the right shows the remaining funding, which there is still a handful of funds in this measure right now, 44,000, which would allow for 88 mowers, which that's a good amount of residents that can go through the program, but isn't quite enough for us to do another event in the community. We did at the last event 155 and could do more than that. We'd probably be aiming to do somewhere in the range of like 200 at hopefully that if it's CSC is supportive of it, we'd look to do about 200 at another event.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, that's not too much left, really. Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie.
This is Laura. Yeah, thank you, Debbie, for that question, and Stephanie for providing us with that number and how you would not be able to do another event given that budget. Are there any other questions from folks? Anything coming up that you'd like to ask Stephanie in the Air District around this? I do see Hector.
So can Stephanie or someone from their district, can you explain the process? Say if we don't fund this event and someone still wants to replace their lawnmower, can you explain the process and what, instead of a drive-through event to exchange it right there and then, what is the process to do it?
This is Stephanie. I'm going to start, but I'm going to encourage anyone on my team that wants to fill in any details or correct to fill in. If you don't go to an event, the program is definitely still open for you to go through. What you'd do is you'd submit an application to us. You'd go to the store and purchase an electric lawnmower. You would take your old, this is an important piece of it, and where we really get the emission reductions is you would take your old, dirtier gas-powered equipment to what we call a dismantler. So they basically, make sure the equipment can't be used again. You'd get back that form that confirms, it verifies that you got it dismantled. You get that packet together of information, submit it to the district, and then you'd then get that funding, up to the $500, depending on what you spent, you'd get that funding back to you. So it is a little bit more, hopefully we've tried to make it as simple as possible, but as you can see, it just is a few more steps than it is if you drive through an event and can just drop off your lawnmower at the dismantler, who's already there at the event, pick up your equipment. You don't have to purchase it. The funding doesn't come out of your pocket for it. So we've really tried to streamline it. And I see Heather has unmuted, so feel free to jump in, Heather.
I do. Thank you, Steph. This is Heather. Just a couple of details that you may not have thought of. You can definitely buy it on Amazon if you want to. You just have to submit your receipt. And it has to show in your receipt that the product is all electric. And so really, other than collecting the receipt from when you bought it and collecting the little piece of paper that the dismantler will give you when you turn in your old one, you just got to take a picture of both those and jump online and upload those at the time you fill out your application, and you're done. You kind of do it all at once. You need both those pieces of paper before you start, and then you're good. Hopefully that made it a little bit less daunting.
Yes, thank you. And it kind of just explains the ease of having these in-person events where the biggest thing is when we're looking at disadvantaged communities, oftentimes the money's the barrier. Even though you reimburse, but being out of pocket out of $500, and then waiting for that to be reimbursed can be a massive barrier. So being able to have this event where you can just exchange without being out of money, out of pocket for so long can go a long ways to really get people to buy in and exchange their lawnmowers. I think that's probably one of the reasons why this was so successful the first time.
And it's Heather again, and has been. That is absolutely eliminating that piece. Being able to show up at the event with the mower and leave with the new one is ideal. One stop.
And that's what I was going to ask. How long does it take to be reimbursed? If you do go to the store and have to buy it yourself, and without, going to a function like a replacement.
It varies. I would say on average, it might take 3 to 4 weeks to get it. It might be sooner, just depending on sort of the financial part of our month, but obviously we run probably 35 grant programs, and so there's an awesome team in the back that process all of those for us.
Okay. So instead of getting it immediately and changing everything immediately, it's a possibly 3 to 4 week challenge.
Well, you would have your new one that you could start using, but to Hector's point, yes, you would be out that money for that amount of time until it got back to you, correct?
Thank you, Heather.
Nice to see you, Debbie.
Well, this is Laura, and I do see a question in the chat from Jazzy. Jazzy is asking to clarify the funding would come from the locomotives measure, which to Stephanie replied yes. So just in case anyone else had that question, yes, it is coming from that locomotive measure. Mary Elizabeth, I see you have a question.
Yeah, so we're not, California Central Traction is not getting a electric switcher.
This is Stephanie. Thanks for the question, Mary. So with this measure, they definitely, I think, Mary, you might remember, and this is an update we've been providing, that we have been working with Central California Traction on making the replacement, which they are still interested in it. But again, kind of just reiterating and just as a reminder, there was a regulation that came into place. Again, this regulation happened in April of 2023. That's just reducing the amount of incentive that they can get, that we, through this kind of state funding, can offer to them. So we're kind of seeking opportunities with them through a federal grant now. So we still want to do the project, but again, this funding source alone, we're kind of limited by what we can give kind of through the state guidelines, and seeking out now federal opportunities that have different guidelines and can potentially offer different incentive amounts to continue to incentivize them to kind of make this replacement. So we're still working with them to make those replacements and still want to do the project, but kind of seeking alternative funding opportunities.
May I make a follow-up question?
Mm-hmm.
How much the state regulations, what is the maximum that they can obtain for that very important, and I believe, that had a lot of emission reductions associated with it.
Yep.
And particularly, through East Stockton, where the Central California traction line goes right through a neighborhood.
This is Stephanie. You're totally right, Mary. This kind of project does have huge emission reductions associated with it, which is why we still want to pursue these projects, hopefully with some federal grant funding to kind of allow it to still happen. I don't know it off the top of my head what they can get kind of just from the state, but I can follow up on that and let you know.
Yeah, so I'm not prepared to take any money out until we know how much they could actually get, to incentivize this, because it's really important for that neighborhood to not have that diesel engine going right through there. And we've got a lot of projects that use the Central California traction line, and it makes a big difference. And I'm not prepared to take any money from that. Thank you, Jazz, for asking that question.
This is Stephanie. If I can maybe respond really quickly, just with a little bit more detail, because I did have a chance to talk to our team about this. Again, we definitely do want to still, given if we do receive these federal grants, want to seek opportunities to leverage that funding. Our team feels pretty confident that at the end of the day, though, the full $6.8 million likely wouldn't be used. For this leveraging of funds. And so I think just to put in perspective, I think the $200K from lawn and garden from this measure, I don't think would make too much of an impact on what we can potentially leverage, again, these state funds with federal funds for. I totally hear you, Mary, but just to put in perspective some of the feedback that we got from our grants team, I just wanted to share that information.
Laura, yeah, thank you, Mary Elizabeth, for that question and for that additional context, Stephanie. I see Hector has his hand raised and then Debbie. So we will go to Hector and then Debbie.
So again, it's my understanding the money for the switchers for the trains, currently it's not enough to incentivize them to go forward with the change, correct?
This is Stephanie. Yeah, the amount of funding that they can get kind of per unit just isn't, with the kind of regulations that came into place, it's just not a high incentive amount. That's kind of enough of that incentive to get them to do the replacement, correct?
And then even if we keep the money there in that pot, it would just sit there because there's not enough money for them to go forward. And again, there's nothing that we can do to force them to go forward, right?
That's correct. We are still, like I mentioned, seeking, again, federal opportunities that hopefully we still want. I want to make very clear to the whole committee, we haven't given up on these projects. We still want to move forward with them, but just kind of seeking leveraging other opportunities to still be able to do these projects. But yeah, that's correct, Hector.
Debbie, so you have your hand raised.
Me? Debbie, okay. Well, if you even figure 200,000 out of 6.8 million is what? 1/30th or less than that, 1/35th of that total amount. So $200,000 to make a big change like that, I think is extremely important, especially if we are working on federal dollars. Unfortunately, that the law came into effect where they only have, what is it? Is it 4 months to affect those funds if they want funds from us to do that switcher? Whatever, it's a very short time, and it just doesn't seem like that, excuse me, would ever be used.
Laura, yeah, thank you, Debbie, for those additional reflections. I do see that Nate posted on the chat as well. He believes CCT is jointly owned and operated by Union Pacific and BNSF. A lot of moving parts for government incentives and tax issues. And then he also mentioned, similarly to Debbie, 200,000 for mowers will provide an immediate impact to emission reductions in Stockton. So given that, are there any other questions that we have around this agenda item? Okay. I don't see any additional questions. Let me just look quickly through the screens in case anyone is raising their hand. No, okay. So we are, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking for consensus around this measure. Is there anyone in opposition to this measure of moving $200,000 from the locomotives? So shifting that money and supporting this measure.
I already stated my opposition.
Noted. Thank you, Mary Elizabeth. If there is no other opposition, which I do not see in the chat, or anyone raising their hand, and once again, doing a quick browse through folks. There's no other opposition. We can move forward with reallocating those funds given your charter. This is looking for consensus, so majority of votes or a majority of people in favor of this measure. That is a collective decision, so we will move with the funds. Nice, Debbie. Clapping your hands. Awesome. All right. Anything else, Stephanie, your district you'd like to add around this measure? No. Okay. So I think that that's that. So very exciting. We're coming to some decision making for these measures. Let me get everything situated. So I think, yeah, thank you all for that engaging discussion. We're excited to keep this shared decision making momentum going for today and for future meetings. Love to see the collaboration and thinking out loud with everyone. We can now transition to the urban greening and vegetative barriers proposal review. And during this next portion of the meeting, Little Manila Rising is going to be presenting about two different measures. So the urban greening proposal and the vegetative barriers proposal. This might be the first time some folks hear about this proposal. Others may be aware of the proposal because of their engagement in subcommittee meetings, but regardless of where you are in your understanding, we welcome you to share your questions, comments, concerns, and feedback for the proposals. Little Manila Rising is looking forward to providing you all with an update on where the proposals are currently. And there are no decisions to be made today. Just want to be really explicit about that. This is more so of a space to allow Little Manila Rising to share an update with you all. So be in listening mode and curiosity mode. So we really welcome your questions, reflections, and again, any feedback. And you all can provide that general feedback to Little Manila Rising to include in their proposals today. You can let us know via chat, raise your hand, or email. But before Little Manila Rising begins their presentation, Hector and Debbie would like to share a few thoughts with you. And after they share their thoughts with you, we will pass it to the Air District. So yeah, we'll pass it to Debbie.
I just want to say that we've been all pretty much waiting for this for a long time. Those of us that have been with the CSC for a very long time, since the beginning. We are excited to hear about it. We got a sneak peek the other day in our I think it was emails. I'm not sure. Can't remember if it was email or text. But so we're very excited about this proposal, and I don't want to get into any specifics right now because they're going to do all that, and I'll pass it off to Hector.
Well, thank you. And I just like to say that, Little Manila has been a great partner for us for quite a while, very trusted partner in the community, as most of you guys all know them and the work that they do. And the tree planting and the urban greening has just been a fantastic, work that they're doing right now. And just imagine how, I think we really don't think about how much trees can really change a neighborhood. When we're looking at some of the most iconic neighborhoods, it's always tree lined. It's always has a massive tree canopy that, really helps just giving you a peace of mind that you're in a great spot, you're in a great space. So with that, I'm really excited about the work that they're doing, and I just like to hear it. So pass it back to you guys.
And this is Stephanie. I'll just really quickly add that I think just echoing everyone, this is something that I think we've been, for folks that have been on the committee kind of since the start, something that we've been working towards for several years now. And so I think that I'm really looking forward to this meeting because I think it's a really great culmination of all the work that the folks in the trees subcommittee have been doing, Little Manila has been doing, and really this whole committee. So looking forward to digging into the proposals. We do have David Lopez, who's one of our supervisors on our grants team, that's going to present a couple of slides and then pass over to Little Manila to wrap us off, and then essentially open it up, like Lauda was saying, to any discussion and questions. So thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Stephanie, maybe somebody can on your team pull up the presentation for me. That'd be great. But while they're doing that, welcome everybody, or thank you for having me, actually. Sorry. My name is David Lopez. I'm a supervising air quality specialist in our grants program. I've been working with the Stockton CSC and the tree subcommittees now, I think, for about 2 years. And we've had a lot of discussion. We've heard a lot of different feedback. I really appreciate everyone's patience and time, and obviously your heartfelt concern about how these programs impact your communities. So with that, I'm going to kind of do a brief overview of the program. We had $1 million for each measure, for one for urban greening and 2 for vegetative barriers. So a total of $2 million. With that, let's kind of go over a little bit more on what we've received. And we did, and while we're going to the next slide, we've requested we had a request for proposals. We did receive a proposal for each program, both from Little Manila Rising, one for our urban greening program, and the next one was for our vegetative barriers program. So let's start with a little bit with the urban greening proposal. We'll go to the next slide. In their proposal, Little Manila lined out how they are going to spend their funds to implement this project in your community. Just make sure everyone understands the RFP required that any tree planting be done within the boundaries of the Stockton CSC. So all of this will be in the community specifically. Just these are various costs that Little Manila has provided us. These include supplies and materials, any types of contingency for construction, any contracted services that might be needed for tree plantings and maintenance, the trees themselves, any labor and non-construction items. Of course, ongoing maintenance, because these projects do have a 10-year project life. We want to make sure that these trees are sustainable and long-lasting and continue to provide benefit to the community over a decade at the minimum, and then of course, hopefully for years and years to come. So looking at their budget table, they've kind of broken it out into various models in different categories, excuse me. The first one being their data collection, environmental modeling, in terms of how they're going to determine sites and locations and the impacts from these trees. In terms of marketing and materials, they're looking at about over $19,000. They are going to have a significant amount of money in their maintenance, stewardship, and their outreach program. Some money in their project management or administration costs. We're looking at $40,268. In terms of contracted services, where they actually have to work with other parties to help them implement the project, they're looking at $320,000. In terms of contingency, they do have a little bit of contingency in case those costs somehow increase and there's an unexpected rising in prices or something. We do allow for a little bit of contingency there. So that'll be about $91,000. And in terms of trees, in their budget, they're proposing to purchase 500 trees for planting, and that would be $119,000 worth of the budget for the total $1 million. So next slide, or do we want to take questions now, Stephanie? Is there a preference?
This is Stephanie. I do wonder if it's okay if we get through a couple of slides first, because I think that might help people get a world view of kind of both of the proposals. And really the rest of this meeting is all for kind of question and discussion. Right. Does that work, Debbie? Okay.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Next slide, please. So in Little Manila's proposal for urban greening, so they have some potential locations that they're looking to plant. Plantings will occur through the project area. They're utilizing this green prioritization plan that they're using through the data collection and learning from canvassing and outreach. Areas include, but not limited to, neighborhoods south of Harding and surrounding Victory Park, Boggs Track, and a significant portion of the city east of the San Joaquin Fairgrounds. So potential project partners that they have reached out to and had contact with and received support was the city of Stockton and Caltrans. They are working with residences and business through their My Free Tree program. And then, of course, they're looking at the Safe Routes to Schools programs. In terms of long-term maintenance for this program, Little Manila will manage and maintenance agreement stewardship programs for the long-term care of these trees for the minimum 10 years. And then in terms of contracted services, data collection will be performed by HIFI, and these HIFI will be helping to distinguish areas that would best or would maximize the health benefits from these trees. And then lastly, looking for subcontractors will be utilizing for the installation of the trees and removing any concrete or items that is necessary for those trees to be planted. So next slide, please. Moving over to the vegetative barriers proposal. It's very similar in their types of items and materials that they're looking to do. But there is a little bit of difference in terms of some of these items in their budget. In terms of analysis and site survey, they've earmarked about $50,000. Doing some soil tests for $15,000. Marketing and materials regarding the project would be around $9,700. Once again, maintenance, stewardship, and outreach would be $294,000. In terms of their own cost for managing the project, they're looking at $72,000. Once again, reaching out for these contractors to help with the installation and mobilization and construction of the trees at $292,000. And then, of course, some contingency, once again, for around $90,000. And in total, they are looking to plant 350 trees for $175,000 as part of their project. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So in terms for the vegetative barriers, these project locations that Little Manila has presented as potential sites one is Hazelton Elementary School, which is adjacent to a Caltrans right-of-way. Additional sites along the I-5 northbound, West 8th Street exit, sorry. In some Stockton right-of-ways along East MLK Boulevard and South Golden Gate Avenue. Potential project partners, once again, would be Caltrans, City of Stockton, and Stockton Unified. Looking at a pilot stewardship program, which would maintain, monitor, and evaluate implemented projects, including local resident job training and hiring. And once again, the vegetative barriers also has a 10-year requirement for maintenance. So Little Manila will have a maintenance agreement stewardship program for the long-term and success of these trees. And then lastly, HIFI will lead the modeling and prioritization and design of the vegetative barrier sites to make sure that the sites that have these vegetative barriers are have the best type of design in mitigating dust coming from the roads and other items. So next slide. In terms of project timelines, so phase one, there's an implementation plan. Of course, then we go into data collection, modeling, speaking with communities and engaging with stakeholders, determining greening prioritization, and then doing conceptual site designs. The second phase would then be working with the local jurisdictions on permitting, start planting trees, developing stewardship and maintenance programs, developing and completing their master plan, and then, of course, defining performance goals. And lastly, on phase three, these projects would have ongoing stewardship and outreach, additional plantings, and continued maintenance, and then finally a report and presentation to the stakeholders showing the development and implementation of the project. And I think that might be
and I think this one we're going to pass over to Little Manila
okay,
to go over.
Thank you,
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Good with you, Amigo.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicholas Tamayo. I'm the Urban Forestry Director at Little Manila Rising. I'm really excited to be in front of you all again. It's been a long time. I just want to also thank you all for your feedback and your participation in this process. I think we have been in some sort of conversation about our proposals for over 18 months now. And we have really tried to take every bit of feedback that you've given us each time and revise this proposal to meet and accommodate your needs and desires for this effort. As Hector said, like we are a partner in the community already. We do work through TCC. And we're very proud of where we've been able to get to in just under 3 years. And we're really hopeful that we get to work with you all through this project to continue planting trees in our community. I just wanted to just go over some of the changes that we've included in this last iteration of our proposal. There was a strong desire to see more trees planted, and so we bumped up the number from 440 to 500. For folks who haven't been in conversations before about this proposal, for the 10-year maintenance requirement, we felt like as like the primary grantee or maintenance holder, 500 trees was where we know that we can complete and keep those trees alive. It's a big number for us. It's just under our first planting deliverable through TCC round 3. So we feel it's a competitive number for this funding. We also were able to spend a lot of this previous year working to reallocate funds in our TCC project to purchase equipment so that we could focus more funds through our AB617 proposal on tree installation costs, on staff time to spend working on trees. And so we were able to purchase a watering truck, a water trailer, a stake bed truck, a pickup truck, and a minivan now to do this work and not allocate any costs from this budget on equipment. We put $85,000 more to our tree plantings, more staff time, and more subcontractor services. We've also been working to field bids from subcontractors to verify that the requested funds for the projects across the urban greening and the vegetated buffers was feasible. And we do feel confident that we can complete this project within the $1 million allotted. We're looking at contracting for concrete removal, site preparation, backhoe use, installation of tree wells, and then the actual tree costs themselves. One really exciting advancement that, really makes the vegetated buffer project exciting is that we've had really positive conversations with the local district at Caltrans. They've been really excited about the possibility of piloting a vegetated buffer stewardship project through AB617 with us. We've shared with them our potential site maps. And they have been really proactive in helping us figure out how do we actually get trees planted quickly on Caltrans right of way. And we've identified that the Adopt a Highway program is one avenue that could really get us to where we want to be quickly. And so while those conversations have been briefly put on hold because we want to make sure that we can implement, and obviously there's a decision-making process that you all have to go through. They're basically waiting on us to give a green light to start drawing up plans and looking at sites. So we're really excited about that. We feel like we have a potentially excellent partner with our local district. And then we have had conversations similarly with SUSD, their sustainability office. And there's interest in having our trees planted on schoolyards. And so again, these are just conversations that we'll pick up immediately should you guys vote to move forward with our proposal. And we will continue to augment TCC plantings in the project area where TCC and AB617 overlap by doing backyards and side yard plantings. So with that said, Stephanie, I know that some folks do have questions, so maybe we open it up and maybe the questions that you all shared with us earlier will come up again. But I do have additional things to share with you all through, like, I can share my screen, but maybe we'll just open it up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nicholas. This is Laura. I do see Debbie's had her hand raised, so we can go to Debbie and then I'll read a question that we have on the chat, in the chat.
Okay, so this is Debbie. Is there a way that we could put the proposal back up on the first page?
This is Stephanie. Debbie, do you want the urban greening or the vegetative barrier one?
Yeah, the whole proposal on the first page. Well, the whole thing. Because they kind of joined it all together. They made it pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 9, right? So I'm just going to give it by page number.
Sorry, Debbie, 1 second. Do you want me to pull up the actual proposals or this slide?
This is perfect.
Perfect.
This is what they shared. Yeah, what was shared. So this is perfect. So the contracted service, basically, if someone could explain, I mean, we know what marketing is, we know what data collection is. So those two, I don't think need any explanation. But maintenance, stewardship, outreach, maybe a little teeny bit on that. Project management, that's pretty basic. Contracted service, if somebody could go into what that entails. The contingency, if we don't spend the contingency, will that mean that we get that many more trees, type of thing? And I just kind of figured it out in my head. Does that mean the trees cost approximately $25 each?
I'll start with that one. So our cost per tree is $238 per tree.
Sorry,
So,
I was off by a zero.
yeah,
I'm
so
sorry.
I'll tell you how we got that number. Well, we started as a baseline in TCC, our only other source of funding. We are working with a $200 cost per tree. And what goes into that is the cost from the nursery, because we purchase our trees from a wholesale supplier. So we got estimates from our wholesale supplier about the average cost of the trees that we've planted thus far was about $75 to $150 was the range for the tree itself. And then we built in costs.
So you have planted trees already?
Yeah. That's correct. Yeah, we've been planting trees for the last 3 years. We've planted about 345 trees in South Stockton thus far.
So this is almost used up then.
This is through a different source of funding.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, we just use it as a reference point for us to start at for finding costs for this project.
Okay.
And so it includes the cost of the tree itself. It includes the stakes, the supportive structure, so stakes and ties. It includes irrigation, so water bags or tree diapers. And then we also include potentially like a cost for replacing that tree. If for any reason that tree dies, if it's vandalized, if it's stolen, if it dies, we have funds remaining for each tree to purchase a replacement. And so that's where that $238 comes in.
How big are the how many gallons are we talking about?
Yeah. So we start at 15 gallons. But we know that $238 also is enough of a budget to purchase 24-gallon trees from our supplier. So We have flexibility to plant larger trees where it makes sense, and also be planting these 15-gallon trees that you usually see in planting projects. As for maintenance, stewardship, and outreach, that's our labor costs. So that's our staff time. That's a budget for myself to spend time on this project, for our outreach manager to spend time on this project. It also is going to fund 2 new community foresters on our staff to focus entirely on this project. It also includes a new forestry manager, a manager for our planting operations. So we understand that like this is another project and it requires more staff. And so these are folks that are going to be focused 100% on tree planting and tree health and community education. And then lastly,
So basically that's five full-time staff.
it's here, I'll give you the exact breakdown. It's it's a couple of very partial time. It's 2 part-time foresters, quarter time of a communications manager, and a quarter time of a communications coordinator.
And that's $367,000.
Yes.
Wow.
Across 3 years. That's correct.
Oh, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's still a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I'm just going to say that's a lot, in my view, being a former HR person, but you know, that's a lot. And then what is the contracted service?
So contracted service is the landscape support, so concrete removal. And if we do end up planting larger trees, if it's beyond our staff's capacity, being able to work with a landscaper to help bring those trees in and auger the holes for us. And then Hi-Fi Design Labs is our key partner in this project. And so I'm going to pass it to James, who is going to talk about their scope of work.
Wait. I think I still have more questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just wanted for James to be able to answer your last question.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, as long as we keep it short, because I don't want to take up everybody else's time. I just want to, yeah.
This is Laura. Debbie, thank you so much for your questions. Is it okay after that last question gets answered if we move to some other folks that have questions, and then we can pass it back to you for any remainder questions?
I think it's really important that we find out what kind of trees. And I haven't heard that yet. So I would like to know that. That's what I think is more important than finding out about the other thing that we were talking about, the other part of the budget. What kind of trees are we planning in Stockton for urban greening?
Well, we always preference native species and drought tolerant species where we can. But for city right of way, we're limited to the city of Stockton's list of approved trees. And so we follow those guidelines because we want to ensure that any tree that we plant on city right of way is considered a city tree, so that it's maintained by the city. And so we follow those guidelines. I'd be happy to share with you that list. And then like any further detailed planting list we would be developing that in that first quarter of the project.
That's it. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I think those are all amazing questions. This is Laura. And yeah, maybe the questions that you had, other members had, so that's really helpful. I do see Margot posted in the chat. How do you envision the Adopt a Highway program working?
Well, we're hoping to learn more from Caltrans on that. From our understanding, we would work with the coordinator of the Adopt a Highway program to apply for a project, and we would work with them to identify that site. Obviously, we would be bringing data to inform the sites that we want to adopt. And then we would work with that coordinator and the landscape architects to prioritize planting water-wise species, drought-tolerant species, work with them to ensure that we're allowing for the appropriate buffer space so that, vehicles aren't going to drive into them if they're spinning off the road, and then implementing the planting strategy. And so I also want to make sure that if Brent or James, if you have more to offer on this question, feel free to jump in.
I can give a little more background if that's helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm Brent Buckton with IP Design Lab. We're working with Nico and the LMR team. We've also, I'm personally from another AB617 community in Oakland, but we've worked with over 5, and we have worked with Caltrans as well. And there's really 2 routes to doing tree planting on Caltrans. One is to do an Adopt a Highway program that's actually an established program that lets people, as many folks know, like go out and do cleanup on the highway around certain guidelines. It also more recently has allowed groups to plant trees. Normally that's planting much smaller trees, but in our discussions with them, they're allowing us to plant larger trees so that we can really try to achieve the air filtration benefits of vegetative buffers. This Adopt a Highway route is a lot less arduous than a normal sort of what is called an encroachment permit process with Caltrans. And that normally requires like far more drawings, CEQA environmental approvals, and sometimes like a year or more of just planning and an approval process. So we were really excited when we pitched the Adopt a Highway program that they were open to that, and that that the folks in Caltrans thought that that would be a good route. So we're using both mechanisms in different places depending on the scale of the project, and it's far quicker for us to be able to get trees into the ground, and we have to spend a lot less on permits and red tape and logistics and going through many different Caltrans departments.
Thank you both. Margot, I'm wondering if there's any additional questions you have, or if that answers your question.
No, that was perfect. It sounds like you are the adopter of that portion of the highway. And that's what I didn't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot, for that question. And I did see that Douglas had his hand up. Douglas, do you still have a question? Or any comments? I'm not hearing anything from Douglas, but I will keep a lookout on the chat. And Hector, I believe you also had your hand up before you put it down. So we will go to Hector and then Everett.
So Nicholas, did you say that you were going to be able, with this funding, be able to maintain the trees for 10 years, or did I mishear you?
We're going to commit to maintaining the trees for 10 years. This funding is not going to cover 10 years of staff time. So, but we plan to leverage funds once the implementation period ends to continue maintaining these trees. And that can look like a lot of different things, right? Like that looks like our staff directly watering, pruning, mulching those trees, monitoring them, working with residents to make sure the trees are healthy. But it also might look like contracting in the future once these trees grow beyond our capacity, because we don't climb trees. A lot of folks think that we do offer like full forestry services, but we don't actually work with trees that are over 10 years. They are usually a lot bigger than what we can handle, and I don't have any arborists on my staff. And so we we hope that we'll be able to work with some local landscape providers, local tree service companies, and be able to and contract with them. And hopefully in 10 years, the city itself has increased its own capacity to do more like what's the word? Productive and proactive tree service for our canopy beyond removing and line clearing. And that's a huge part of my job is trying to work with the city to help them build their capacity. I know we're not there yet. I know it's a huge question mark for all of us. What happens to these trees after 10 years? And it's something that we're really working hard to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. This is Laura. Everett, see you have your hand raised, and then Stephanie, you can go ahead. Everett, I see that you're unmuted, but we cannot hear if you're saying something.
No, he needs to.
Okay. We can, okay, Everett, I see you're unmuted again. Yeah, we can't hear you, Everett.
Move on.
Stephanie, Everett, maybe you can post it in the chat if that's okay. Then we can read it out loud.
This is Stephanie. Everett, you also feel welcome to text like Rocio or myself too, and we're happy to ask the question aloud to the group. Thanks everyone for the engagement. I do believe we had, so just as a reminder to folks, we did have a chance to send out the proposals, the actual proposals that Little Manila submitted, as well as the presentation. So I just wanted to remind folks, I know there's a lot of detail there. There are pretty hefty proposals, but there's a lot of really great details in there. And I think a few folks were able to send back some questions. So I actually did want to pull a couple, especially one that I know was pretty popular and a few people asked, which I'm wondering if Nico and the team can you all talk a little bit about the My Free Tree program and what it looks like for like a resident to get involved in that?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to share my screen for this one. Just gonna pull this up real quick. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
So this is not the most up-to-date My Free Tree sign-up form, but I wanted to give you all a sense of what it looks like for a resident when they work with us to receive a tree. And so we advertise this program. We're at a lot of tabling events. We go and canvas in our neighborhood to offer My Free Trees to residents. What that is an opportunity to enroll into a maintenance agreement with us where we will plant a tree on your property and maintain it for 3 years. And so how that works is the folks apply for this program, they sign up, and they ask if we could do a site assessment with them. We go and do a site assessment where we determine if the location can receive a tree. We help them determine the right tree for their front yard. Since this is a TCC funded project, we are limited to planting in front yards. And so we'll do a site assessment on their planting strip or their front yard, determine the tree, and then schedule a planting day for them. At that, like we do a utility check, and then we make sure that we're not gonna damage any lines or any utilities, and then we come out and we plant that tree. And then we do consistent maintenance and monitoring checkups for these residents over the establishment period, which can be anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And so our foresters are routinely going out and monitoring the trees. We're staying in contact with the My Free Tree stewards, as they're called. They have us on speed dial, so if anybody has an issue with their tree, whether it's looking like it's failing or they need a replacement stake because somebody stole or vandalized it, or the tree's looking a little dry. We come out and we do assessments and we'll do work routinely on these trees to make sure that they're established. Because, as Kyle mentioned in chat, the first, 10 years is the most critical part of a tree's life. And so we really work hard to make sure that the folks who are entering into this relationship with us to take care of this tree are supported, because we know it's a huge commitment to have a tree planted on your property. It's time, it's money, it's your water bill. And so we have a water trailer to try and supplement your costs by doing that. And so this is a map of our existing My Free Tree Stewards. We have, had some success with this project, and we really hope to capitalize on like this community if we're able to expand into the AB617 project area, to work with you all directly, to find planting locations, to find neighbors of yours who are looking for trees. We found that once we've planted these trees, their neighbors want us to come and plant trees on their property, because they see us planting them, they see us coming back and taking care of those trees, and they know that they're not going to be alone in that process. And so it's a little bit about our project. Does anybody have any questions?
Laura, thank you, Nicholas. I see that Margot asked if you can make the font larger. Margot, was there anything in particular that you wanted them to hone in on?
No, that was for the prior slide, and I actually
okay.
found my screen could enlarge in it, so who knew?
Yeah. Awesome.
But since I had my mic open, I just want to say this, it just sounds like lots of good things have been going on. Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Margot. This is
Thank you.
Laura. Okay, I do see Everett, you have your hand raised. Let's give this a try. Okay, Everett, you're not unmuted, but I do see your hand raised.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay. You're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. I'm sorry, Everett. It's always a bummer to have some technical difficulties, but as Stephanie offered, you can feel free to text her or Rocio, and they will be happy to read out your question and your comment. Hector, I see you have your hand raised.
So just more of a comment. I'm just hoping that I know Nick would be open to any type of questions that you may have after this meeting. And then everybody be diligent about the proposal, about the information, and kind of go over it on your own and not wait until the next meeting, so that, when it comes time that they put together a proposal, it did a lot of work. I know they gave us this information. So hopefully, of course, be diligent as far as doing your background and really considering, everything, but making sure that you're doing your job too as a member to make sure that any questions that you have get answered. So at least if you're not ready by this meeting, by the next meeting, that we can take a vote and we can go forward whether it be a yes or no, but that we have an answer. And that's just more of my comments.
This is Laura. Thank you, Hector, for that comment. And I also see on the chat you said that Little Manila Rising has a background, trust, and ability to do this work in the AB617 area. So I appreciate your reflection. And Debbie, I see you have your hand raised.
And I have a comment too. After listening to everything, and I just think that they've done some wonderful work here. I'm so proud of them. Little Manila Rising, everyone who's on the committee. It's when I bought my house, I had very little money to buy my house, and luckily I only needed a few $1,000s to buy my house. But when I bought it, my big, huge tree out in front was destined to die, and it had to be cut down. And I was told by a realtor and a couple of appraisers that not having that tree there cut the value of my home between $3,000 and $10,000. And I was amazed that that tree, it was a big, huge tree, but I was amazed that it added that much value. So this is a program that is going to, you know, add value to people's homes, to their lives. There's so much about trees that I love, and we all love. So I hope everybody really dives into this, asks as many questions as you need to ask. I'm sure these guys at Little Manila will be happy to answer any questions that you have in the meantime. But we're not going to be voting on this today, as far as I know. And, but look for it very soon, if not the next meeting. So I hope you all dive into it, as I said. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie, for your reflections. And yeah, I think you're starting to wrap us up in this agenda item, but I'd like to pass it to Stephanie for any other reflections and comments before we wrap up.
This is Stephanie. Yeah, thanks, Laura. I do have a question, which I think actually hopefully can highlight a couple of questions that I maybe heard earlier in this meeting, but also received via email, which I know maybe to Debbie's question about earlier about maybe if Nico and team, if we could describe a little bit more about contracted services. And I know that we have the Hyphae team here with us, and maybe we can also dive into or have them have an opportunity to highlight the kind of work that you all would be doing in the grant. And then maybe like along those lines and highlighting Hyphae's work. And a question that we also received is if you all can describe a little bit more about how you all choose where to put the vegetative barriers. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's part of Hyphae's contracted work, but maybe I'll pass to you all.
Sounds good. I can handle that if you want, James, but James is also on the project with me. So to give folks some background, we are from West Oakland, another AB617 community. And for now over 10 years, we've been working on developing strategies on how to design vegetated buffers near freeways to protect our own community and other communities. We've worked in over 8 different communities in California, and now 8 or 10 throughout the country to focus on greening, in particularly for health. And what we actually do is we build models that leverage pollution data that's been collected from sensors, but also developed by the Air District and other partners. We then do microclimate modeling. So we actually look at specific locations and look at not only on a large scale where the wind directions are blowing, but really on a microclimate scale of like how wind is moving across a freeway, how many vehicles are moving across the freeway, what the pollution potential is, And then designing vegetated buffers in particular isn't just like normal tree planting where you're sort of plopping them in the ground wherever you can fit them. The vegetation density is very important, and also the species are extremely important. And so in most of these cases, we're actually looking for evergreen species that have a lot of leaf area and surface area. We've worked now on over 7 grants that have gotten funding to study and plant these. So some from the Air District, some from the Governor's Office of California, some from the Federal Highway Administration, National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health, and are really trying to optimize how these are designed. It really requires dense planting with dense leaf structure that also allows some air movement to go through it though. And in other locations, we've actually been able to show anywhere from like 20 to 40% removal of ultrafine particles. Ultrafine particles are the ones that are actually going to get deepest into your lungs and sadly, in some cases, into your bloodstream and then have other impacts throughout your bloodstream, even in your brain. There's sadly coalitions around ultrafine particles and even dementia. We're doing a health study in Louisville, Kentucky, where we've done these green belts and planting throughout the community. And recently, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, found very promising health data outcomes around inflammation reduction and greening. So unlike a lot of standard greening of just getting trees and canopy into a neighborhood, really trying to address air quality is a much more complicated science. And so we both target areas with high pollution, which is normally around freeways. And so we use a combination of air pollution data, vehicle traffic data from Caltrans, and other sources. But then we also use health data. So we look at which communities at like sort of a census and census tract level are most at risk, and have had historically the highest levels of asthma and or other cardiovascular issues. We also look at, in particular, sensitive receptors. So sensitive receptors are both youth, smaller children who are developing. So planting near schools and daycares is extremely important, as well as senior centers. So students and seniors, and then women of birthing age are really the most susceptible people to air pollution impacts. So we'll take all of those into consideration. And then what we're also doing is doing essentially measurement of air pollution with high quality instruments before and after the planting, because part of the goal of these projects is that as much as work as we have done, it's still extremely innovative work and what we're trying to do is really build the evidence around these vegetated buffers and how they're designed to then convince groups like Caltrans and City of Stockton to implement them at scale. So big part of a chunk of this is actually doing some of that actual measurement and modeling work. As we were talking about earlier, another big piece is actually working with Caltrans or other locations where we're planting to develop, in some cases, pretty extensive drawings. So we have to get surveys, we have to do irrigation design, planting design, coordinate the delivery of large trees. And so that's kind of a general overview of what goes into the selection process. And so our work is more so in the vegetated barrier scope, but there is also work we're doing in the broader urban greening scope to help prioritize locations for tree planting based on some of those same considerations. So instead of planting just in the freeway, we're going to be looking at certain residential parcels that they themselves are near freeways and might want to get certain types of greening. A lot of the biggest challenges with other funding is that it can't include money to do concrete removal. So beyond our own scope, one of the other big scopes here is actually hiring small local minority contractors that we've done work to identify in the area who can actually come out and do concrete removal. And essentially, this is like one of the most critical issues to getting trees in the most impacted environmental justice areas, because some of the most impacted areas are also the most paved because they're formerly industrial, or due to just standard sort of redlining impacts, they're far more paved. And getting the pavement removed is often expensive, and it's not covered by a lot of other grants. And that's what makes this grant opportunity extremely unique. And a big chunk of that money will be going to that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brent, for that context. Stephanie, is there anything else you have a follow-up question around this? No.
Excuse me, Dr. Farrell here. I would like to understand how far from the freeway does that cover?
Hmm.
If you
Yeah.
are a block from the freeway or half a block, how far are right bumper to the freeway?
That's a really great question. And that's something that ourselves and a bunch of other researchers have been looking into. And what we see is, and this is both represented in air pollution sampling and also sadly in a lot of health data, is that basically anywhere from about 500 feet to 1,000 feet from the edge of the freeway, depending on wind conditions, has a really elevated pollution level, and then it drops off dramatically. So that often translates to essentially like one city block, or maybe 2 city blocks will have a more significant impact. And by planting the vegetation as close to the freeway as possible, you get the potential to remove more pollution. So the idea is, like, if we can actually get the trees onto Caltrans land or right along, roadways that are controlled by the city, the pollution is dissipated less at that point. So we have the ability to remove more of it before it gets out into the community. But yeah, generally about one city block or 500 feet is, highly elevated, and then it drops off from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell, for that question. I do want to elevate in the chat Nate's comment. Nate mentioned, I believe that more than half, possibly 2/3 of trees planted at Legion Park in Stockton in January 2020 have died. Not sure, Nate, if there's any additional context that you'd like to add and given your comment. Don't see anything from Nate. He may be typing, not sure, but we can get to that if they are typing.
Can I just ask a question quickly, Laura?
Okay.
Did Little Manila Rising plant those?
No, we did not.
And so it's Lincoln, is that in our district? Is that in the AB617 area, Nate?
Yes, Margot, to answer your question, I had to get my mic off mute. Legion Park is actually in central West Stockton. It's located near Lincoln and I went blank on the name of it. It's pretty close to Dameron Hospital. It's the one in which the water dead ends into a little lake. And it was built originally, I think, as flood prevention. It's also the area where they're putting in a $6 million floodgate. It was highly controversial. But the park is in a semicircle around a lake. And I think it was a nonprofit, somewhat amateur group that planted the trees. I wasn't trying to blame Little Manila for that particular thing. I'm agreeing with Little Manila that those first 10 years apparently are very, very critical, especially the first 2 or 3 for the trees to take root and really grow and nurture. I think we were at the end of the extreme drought conditions when they were planted, and that probably contributed to that high death toll.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. I do see Mary Elizabeth asked a question. Was that Puente?
I don't know if it was Puentes. I know that they did do a lot of tree planting in around Stockton prior to Little Manila picking up this work. But I will say that the reason why we have such a large staff included in this work, the reason why we've worked with the TCC funders to purchase equipment is because we tried to not recreate the past or make the same mistakes in the past that have been made here in Stockton and in every city that is trying to rebuild their canopy with young tree plantings. We are trying to fill that void. We know that the city doesn't have staff proactively planting and maintaining trees, and we can't be a nonprofit and saying that we'll plant trees for you all. If we can't take care of them, we're not going to plant and run away. And I'm not saying that that's what Puentes did. I know Clifton is a good friend of mine. He was planting by himself with volunteers, and sadly that means that the maintenance, there's not a lot there to do maintenance for the trees. Our strategy is to build a program that prioritizes maintenance over planting. And that may mean that we sometimes plant less trees, but that we're devoting our resources and time to making sure those trees actually reach maturity and make the impacts on our heat island and our pollution that our community is in dire need of. We need all of these trees to hit maturity to provide shade. I grew up in Land Park in Sacramento. Like, I know what it's like to walk down a street and never feel the sun because I'm completely covered by these giants, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And I don't know if that's what happened at American Legion, but it has happened at other sites that are now under our stewardship. And we've had to replace trees that were planted within the last 10 years because they never got watered regularly. And the stakes stayed on the trees too long and are girdled around the trunks. Like, all of these things require people to be taking care of these things. And so I just wanted to allude back to your previous question about the labor time, Debbie, and why those costs are what they are is because we're spending a lot of hours in the field doing the work. And so I hope that—
Excuse me, I'm gonna get going at the moment. I'm not feeling well, so I'm gonna leave 15 minutes early, okay? Thank you.
Feel
Sorry
better,
for
Douglas.
interruption.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is Laura. Really appreciate all that engaging discussion. It seems that it would be great to bring you all back for our next meeting in October to continue this conversation, get a little bit more in depth and answer any additional questions that members may have. If it's okay with you all, I'd like to transition us to the next steps and agenda planning. So pass it off to my colleague Jared. And I see Stephanie, you have your hand raised. So before Jared, we'll take it to Stephanie.
This is Stephanie. Sorry, I have one last comment about this, and I just wanted to thank Little Manila. I did hear Hector's recommendation, and just wondering if that resonated with folks of kind of coming to the next meeting, being prepared to or if there's interest in supporting this at the next meeting, or if we want it to be more of a discussion style, just so we know how to prepare for the next meeting. Maybe I'll just say that aloud, and I think maybe Laura, this is a planning. Maybe I jumped ahead. This could also be a planning for the next meeting too. Oh, perfect. Okay, I'll let Laura take it away. Sorry.
You're okay. We can pass it to Jared. Jared's gonna take us to next steps and wrap us up.
Yes, hi everyone. This is Jared Zachary speaking again. Good to see everyone again. I really want to thank you all for engaging in thoughtful conversations. Given time, we will be giving standing updates via email just to transition to next steps and talking about the agenda. So the Air District is proposing to bring back the urban greening and vegetative barriers agenda topic, as well as some general SERP implementation updates at the next meeting in October. I wanted to pause and see, are there any objections to those proposed topics?
This is Marco. I just would like to say, I want people to read the proposals closely. They're very detailed, and I hope that we can make a decision at the next meeting and not just talk about it. If you have any concerns at all, let Stephanie know, or let the Air District know as soon as possible. And they can get the message to Little Manila. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marco. All right, so I'm not seeing any other hands raised or in the chat, so it seems like there are no objections with the consensus that we will be discussing this next month. And I see your public announcement, Mary Elizabeth, in the chat. Thank you. I will read that in a bit. In the interest of time, I would like to transition and kind of start winding us down and checking in about the action items. So Lotta, are you able to pull the action items up?
Yes. And I was just finishing typing one up, so Jared, I'll go ahead and read it if that's okay. Can you all see my screen? Okay. So Air District to follow up with the city of Stockton to understand if mopeds and scooters are allowed in sidewalks. AD to move forward with reallocating locomotive funds to the residential lawn and garden measure to support an additional 400 lawnmowers and hold additional lawnmower distribution events in Stockton. And Amy, thank you for finishing my thought. CSC to take time to go through Little Manila Rising's proposal and be ready to make a decision at next CSC meeting. So those are the three, which is in October 2025. Those are the three action items that we developed. If there's anything, please let us know. If there's anything missing, please let us know and we can write that in. Take it away, Jared.
Thank you. Mary Elizabeth, I see you have your hands up.
Yes, thank you. So moped slash e-bike slash scooter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just made that adjustment. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for everyone for your time. For our co-host this month, Debbie and Hector, and we're really looking forward to collaborating with co-hosts in the future. So again, if you have any interest in being a co-host for next month or any months to come, we can coordinate and feel free to reach out. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, October 7th at 5 p.m. via Zoom, and we hope to see you all there. And if it works for everybody else, we can transition to public comments. We're grateful that all the CSC has shared during this meeting. And at this time, I would like to open up our public comment period and invite any members from the public that are in attendance to make any comments.
Heather. Okay. No, you can't. That's my little page.
See that Debbie Bird has a public comment. But I'm also seeing Jared, Amy, a comment from Mary Elizabeth in the chat.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and just say something. So we've got a big project that is fixing to try to come into Stockton that's going to tremendously increase our rail pollution and our marine pollution, as well as off-gassing various wood products. We already have the DTE open storage of wood products, and there's been a recent fires in Savannah, Georgia, that has a similar type project as what wants to come to the port. And Shay here gave a compelling presentation. And this is one way that biomass is fixing to try to greenwash themselves with some carbon storage. So it's called Becca's. And so I encourage you to check out that document and register for the event if you're able to. It's at 4 o'clock. So that's kind of not a great time for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Elizabeth, and thank you for sharing that document.
So Mary, it passed? Is that what I'm understanding? I'm not.
No, it's getting ready to be reviewed. This is a proposed project.
Right. I watched the committee meeting, the executive committee meeting for the port.
That was a hydrogen production facility.
Oh, this is a different one.
Yes, this is a different one.
So I'm just going to go ahead since Mary since people are silent, and I just want to thank Mary for bringing that up. I just want to remind this group, our issue has been the air quality in our area. And we are working on, we developed the SERPs, we developed issues, we have things going on. We're switching out lawnmowers. But big things keep happening and big projects keep coming into our area. And this will be separate from AB 617, I'm guessing, but we really need to coalesce and gather together and forge together to start working on our community to stop adding many projects that are dirtying our air, large projects, large heavy duty truck projects. And so think about that. Let's talk sometime when we get a chance about how we can move forward. I don't know, Stephanie, can that be part of this AB 617 group in some way? Can we have this city come and, well, no, because it's actually the leaders, it's not the staff that's the issue. Okay, enough said. Thank you.
This is Stephanie Margot. I appreciate you asking the question. We do have a regulatory and enforcement subcommittee that has been meeting pretty regularly where we have discussed our indirect source rule, which does have some impacts on it is a rule that is related to different types of if there is a construction of a warehouse, some of the mitigation measures, some of the actions that they need to take in order to move forward with that. And we have had in the past a presentation on that, but I do think that's something that I'm just pinning now a topic that we can bring back and continue to work with that subcommittee on. I think that could be the perfect place to do that, have that kind of discussion.
Yeah, and I usually attend that committee meeting. I missed this last one. But it's this whole committee. I really think we have to find a way to reach out to our political leaders. Thank you.
This is Dr. Farrell again. I would like to understand that there will be groundbreaking in 2025 for a train that is going from Stockton to the Livermore BART station. Are this committee, aware of this or what?
Sorry, Dr. Farrell, didn't catch that. That was a comment. Was that a question?
Yes, that was the question.
Okay.
About a train starting to be built from Stockton beginning in 2025, next year. This is supposed to be a hydrogen train, from what I understand.
Yeah, I know a little bit. I know the Valley Link project is looking at connecting the Valley to Livermore, and they are committing to environmentally clean hydrogen. There are several different types of hydrogen projects, and some are very dirty, and some are very polluting, and some are cleaner. And Valley Link, as I understand it, is committing to the very clean pathway. But, well, maybe we should have a little presentation.
Yes, I think that would be wise.
Thank you. And I see Amy capturing that on the notes, so we will share that with the Air District and see where that can be plugged in future meetings. I do see that we are at 7, and to be respectful of everyone's time, I would like to just ask one last time if there's any additional comments, questions before we sign off. I don't see anything coming up for you all for questions. We do want to thank you for an engaging discussion today, and we look forward to continue this conversation for October. And yeah, if you all want to be co-hosts, let us know, let Rocio and Stephanie know. We really look forward to collaborating with you all, and again, extending our gratitude to Hector and Debbie for all their work that they did for this month. You could definitely feel a difference when there's co-hosts in the meeting. So really appreciative, and yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday and a great rest of your week. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Stay cool.
Stay cool.
Good night, everyone.